Hola, hola. Welcome to Dímelo with me, Claudia, where I talk to people in the sports world about their jobs, passions, and challenges. We have fun, we get personal, and sometimes it feels like a therapy session, but don't worry, it's only good fun. Michelle, thank you so much for joining me. There are so many things that we can talk about. We were able to have a chat the other day that just sparked so much other conversation that I think will be so valuable for other people in this industry, for women and for Latinas like us to hear. But first, before we get into that, please give us a background of who you are, what you've done in your career so far. I think it'll be super interesting to hear everything that you've done.
Yeah, so thank you. First of all, thank you for having me. It's a delight to be here. Super excited for what you're launching as well. Amazing and exciting. But yeah, my background is in TV broadcast. I started in journalism, studying journalism at the University of Texas of Austin. I'm born and raised in Austin, Texas. It was a small city, and now I think everyone knows what Austin is about. So it's been growing so much. When I first started my career, I was like, okay, well, I think I need to move to New York City or move to like Philadelphia or some place that has a soccer team because there's no future here. When I was in college, I actually met Grant Walt, and a few people know this because I was one of the biggest advocates and pioneers in my school that was like driving the coverage for soccer. I was like women's soccer. We had a really good St. Edward's University soccer men's team. And so I was really trying to give a voice to this sport here in Austin because, college football is king. Everyone knows who the Texas Longhorns are. And if you don't, then you need to open Twitter. I'm just kidding. But yeah, so I landed an interview. He was at Sports Illustrated during that time. And we were talking about how he landed, the interview with Drogba. Drogba was still at Chelsea. And so it was like an amazing, a big Chelsea fan myself. So that was like a really big get, talking to a journalist, American journalist as is. And so that kind of inspired me to really find my path, find my way. Everyone knows that if you want to do TV broadcasts, especially in sports, that you need to go to a smaller town. So here in Texas, it would be like Odessa, Midland, places that you really don't have soccer. I mean, you have college, or high school football, and then some, athletes that go on to college. But that wasn't my passion. I wish I loved softball or baseball as much as I loved soccer, but I felt like a little outlier. So when I decided to stay in Austin to start my career, because I had a very, very hard time looking for my first job, I actually started out at a production company here who worked with major networks in New York City. While I was in college, I pitched a show and it got picked up by Discovery. And so, 2 years later, when I landed my first TV job here in Austin as a production assistant, they were like, hey, would you like to join us as an associate producer? And one of my mentors told me, hey, you need to get a finder's fee. And so that finder's fee was more than I can, imagine. I was struggling for so long as a waitress and while trying to figure out this path. And as a bilingual too, as a bilingual woman, there's just so many strengths, but it was very, very hard initially. So I ended up, biting the bullet. I accepted a job with a production company. I started my morning job at CBS Telemundo, a duopoly here in Austin, Texas, working the really early morning shows. And then at night, I worked as a waitress. And then I started connecting with a little bit of Austin FC fans and journalists because Austin had just started the conversation of coming to the city. And then Austin FC came about and I got a contract with CBS Telemundo as a producer. I learned so much there. I ended up doing more of a hybrid role. And yeah, any opportunity that was available to me, I took it. I interviewed players. Till this day, I've been the only female journalist in Austin, Texas, to interview Sebastian Driussi in Spanish. He's very, very shy with the media, so he doesn't really talk to a lot of journalists. And so I think that really speaks for the work that I've done, the resources and the connections that I've really cherished. And yeah, and now I'm just like freelancing, doing my own thing. But that's a really, really short version of my career. But yeah, it's at the end of the day, it paid off. Learning how to speak Spanish fluently on TV while also doing it in English. I just think that finally I was like, yay.
It's a hard thing to do, to be able to speak both languages, and to be able to switch sometimes. Like, so we Michelle and I were talking on the phone the other day, and like we would switch between Spanish and English. And listen, we might do it pretty easily, but it is difficult. Like, my brain sometimes has to like recalibrate, especially when I'm like in Puerto Rico or something and I'm speaking Spanish, and then I come back to the States and like I want to go to the store and start speaking Spanish. I'm like, hold up. Hold up, let's rewire the brain here. But it definitely has its benefits, for people like us in the sport of soccer, which is such an international sport. So you'll see so many Latinos in MLS.
Yeah, and I think I didn't touch on, but it is very important to, highlight, because I worked at Univision after I left Telemundo here, to highlight the very nitty gritty, old school journalism that Spanish broadcasters, Spanish news directors have. They need you and they want you to say the words exactly how they are. I mean, if you think you could get away with, I think English is a little bit more lenient. You could be more like, you can use slang,
Yes.
especially in sports. I think it's entertainment, it's fun. But when you're working in news and you're representing like a Telemundo or Univision, those words you better make sure that you pronounce them right, and then you better make sure that what you're saying is grammatically correct. So
Oh my gosh. I did some work with Telemundo last year, and it was covering like the horse racing, Kentucky Derby and stuff. And I was going to do a hit, and the producer on site was like, okay, like talk about the environment for like 45 seconds. And I was like, okay, 45 seconds, and even in English is difficult. And now I'm going to do it in Spanish, a sport that I don't even know so well. And then I was going to say, like, everybody's laying on the grass, like hanging out in the grass area. So for me, grass is grama. I don't think that everybody uses that word. And they're like, you can't use that word. Like, not everybody knows what that is. Like, that's not very like a word that everybody would know, and not like such a professional word. I'm like, well, what am I supposed to do? This isn't Spanish that I grew up talking, and it's so difficult. I've definitely found more leniency in English, but like you said, also but also in sports is what we're doing, and then when you get to the news side of things, it can be difficult, because also when I was speaking, I had to speak very slowly and try to kind of, it's not that you can't be yourself, but kind of take out that Puerto Rican accent that I have in me and try to be a little bit more neutral. And I'm like, this is so hard. I had to like look up words that would be more neutral that people would know,
yeah.
to make up for the Puerto Rican words that I know that not everybody knows. But it can be difficult. But for you, you've been able to be in so many different types of environments, covering news, covering sports, and on the production side of things, like newsroom production, local, doing your own stuff, covering Austin FC. So I'm interested to hear like how reporting has kind of evolved. Like, how have you seen it? Like, one thing that we were talking about was the outfits that you wear when you go cover. Like, even when I was like in school learning, studying journalism, like how it is now, it wasn't like this. Like, a job that I have like didn't exist before, and that wasn't that long ago. So like, How has the reporting evolved? How has the outfits that women can wear evolved? I mean, there's so many questions that I could go this way, but I'll start off with those couple things.
Yeah, I mean, I think the reporting in general has evolved because it's so fast paced now. Before, I think you used to go to City Hall and figure out what was on the agenda and then whatever. But now you have everyone on Twitter or X. I still call it Twitter. Just I can never get over it. You have, at least when it comes to local news, you have APD, or here APD, so the police department, tweeting out, what homicide they're investigating, where before you used to actually go through maybe like your local newspaper and see, hey, because they're the ones that did the boots on the ground reporting before TV. And now it's like social media has really amplified like what the stories are going to be covered. And the same goes for sports. Like, you have rumors, you have transfer rumors, you have, press releases that tell you certain things, and you think you're gonna cover this angle, for this match, but then it's like, oh, your captain actually is injured, so now we need to switch gears and prep. And if you weren't prepared and really don't follow the team, then you're gonna be like, okay, I need to come up with I need to start researching and come up with something on the spot. So I think now it's stressful. If you have anxiety, make sure to, take your turkey tail or lion's mane. I'm such a holistic person. So to make sure to take all that so you can just be relaxed and kumbaya. But yeah, I think at that aspect of reporting digitally, having a platform, I think it's essential. I mean, if you don't have a social media, a TikTok, then you are really, I think, you're falling behind, because you can reach so many people outside of just your local area. So that goes for all departments in journalism. When it comes to TV, streaming it, I've seen a few newscasts getting streamed through Facebook now.
Yes.
And so, I had a conversation a few years back, with a engineer at my station, my former station, and I was telling him what's going to happen to TV. I'm like, I just don't feel like no one's tuning in to 5 and 10 p.m. anymore. And he was like, no, it will be fine. And I just told him, I was like, it just worries me because by this time, MLS just had sign on with Apple TV. And I told him, it just worries me that, everything that we've kind of worked hard for, you climb the ladder. That's just how you do it. This is like, the traditional route, like all this hard work that I've put, like, where does that leave me? Because essentially, like, networks, you want them to see you, if that's what you choose, where you want to go. Some people are fine just working at their local station. They find fulfillment there, but everyone has personal goals, right? And so he was like, I don't know. He's like, but just know that sports will always keep local TV alive. But if these streaming companies, or if even like Fox and ESPN are planning to launch their own network,
Yeah.
digitally, like, where does that really leave local TV, at least in broadcast where I come from? So it's a big question, and I've talked to professors here at UT Austin, and they're trying to figure out how they can implement social media reporting, kind of like an influencer as well. And back in the day, back in my day, it was like not an okay thing to do. Like, you don't want to be the story, you don't want to be the person in front of the camera where people want to see you. You want to be able to tell the story. And so it's very interesting how it's changing. We talk about women in sports, and I think also the way that you dress has changed. Before, if you showed your shoulders, a little bit of like chest, that was a big no. You were supposed to go to work with a shirt that was maybe up to here, and a blazer on top, and just your hair, your colors are supposed to be neutral, no brights, no whites. That's
no tennis shoes.
No tennis shoes. But in this industry, you have to run. I can't run in high heels, and they're so uncomfortable. So I've seen, it makes me happy though. seeing that it's evolved, because you do find that, at least for women, jeans can be uncomfortable at times.
Yeah.
We have our body changes every month, and so sometimes things fit perfectly, sometimes they don't. They feel a little tighter, we're uncomfortable. I think seeing a more relaxed, on air talent, at least when it comes to women, showing a little bit more skin. Maybe not, the very short like you would see at a halftime show, like a Super Bowl halftime show. Maybe that's a little bit, at least to my preference. I wouldn't
Yeah.
wear that, but to each their own. But I do enjoy that, you know, on air talent, women working in sports are able to wear whatever they choose and whatever makes them comfortable. I know that, me personally, I'm a little bit more conservative just because I grew up around men. And so, I've just always been around guys. I've always been around them. And I just want to keep myself as professional as I can be. So, but, who's to say that maybe one day I'll wear shorts and a little, crop top.
Yeah. I mean, you hit on so many points there. One of them being like the job is always changing. You also spoke about the outfits, and I'm going to come to that in a second. But one is that our roles are always changing. So like in this industry, you can't get too comfortable doing one thing. So like talked about the Apple deal. I spent several years with DC United being able to like host our pregame show and getting to be a sideline reporter on our local, because all that soccer or all the MLS teams had their coverage on local networks. And then when Apple came, all of that changed. So no teams are doing their own coverage anymore. And for me, like that had been everything for me for several years. Like I spent the entire week getting ready for a show every single weekend. Like there are 34 MLS games. I think maybe we had like 2 on national TV every year. So I was doing like over 30 games a season. And then all of a sudden my role went from being that for several years to like no TV. And last year I like felt a little lost, and not everybody got to stay with their MLS club, and
Right.
I was very lucky to be able to stay with DC United, and they kept me on because they still saw where I could fit with the club in different aspects. But like if that's all I had known, if that's all I had ever done, I don't know what the heck I'd be doing right now. But luckily, it's like in this industry, you have to be able to do multiple things. You have to be able to film and edit. Like I would film and edit my interviews as well for social media. Like, be able to, I don't know, keep up with the TikTok trends. I created lots of TikToks for DC United yesterday. Like you have to find different ways to survive in this industry, because you probably, very good chance, 99% chance, you will not be doing the same thing for your entire career. Whereas someone who works like in banking or something, I don't know, I've never, maybe I'm wrong, but like more of that 9 to 5 job, you could be doing literally the same job every day for the rest of your life. In this industry, you don't. So you really have to learn to adapt. So like for you, how has it been, adapting over the years? Because you also were doing a podcast about Austin FC. Like you have been able to have so many different skills that have helped you to be able to keep up with the times.
Yeah, honestly, what makes me the most proud, and I think that gives me the boost, is, there's two things. The Austin FC fans are crazy. I mean, you see them on Twitter. Some are like really, passionate, and some are so kind, and they just like reach out to me and they're like, hey, I appreciate everything that you do. Like, there's no other girl or there's no other bilingual reporter that's doing it. And then being able to really I know Spanish. I talk to these players in Spanish. So being able to quickly like tweet or put out some news where I understand what they're saying. I don't have to go back to the office and like translate. Like I literally can just like do it right here, like on my phone. Whatever Driussi said or whatever, who, Spanish speaker that fans really want to hear from. I've been able to just really find like an audience where they know that on game days or during practices or media availabilities, I'm typically there, and they know to just keep an eye on my feed, my Twitter, my Facebook, whatever it is, my Instagram, and being able to translate that. And so when I think knowing Spanish and being able to communicate with these players and quickly get out the information that they're telling me, it keeps me alive. Like, honestly, it keeps me going. And I'm like, I find fulfillment. And how funny, because, this job doesn't pay a lot. Sometimes it doesn't pay, you
Yeah.
do this on your free time. And, but I find fulfillment. But yeah, being able to really navigate, find your space, find if it's worth it to you, find, I do this because, not for me, but I do this for the future of women who, when I was little, I would watch and I would see just men reporting on the World Cups. And I was always with my dad and my two brothers. And I was like, I really want to be on there. Like, how fun. That looks so fun. And I literally Googled, what do you do to be on TV and cover a World Cup? And it said journalism. I was like, what is journalism? I was like, I thought I was going to be a nurse or something. And yeah, and that's really how I found my passion. So, you know, there's no right way, but at least the way I've been able to stay afloat is by really pursuing what I want to do. And everyone will have their opinions about what you should do. But at the end of the day, I always say, if you don't take a chance on yourself, obviously, make sure you have a job. But if you don't take a chance on yourself, you never know where it could, end up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In terms of the outfits, because that's a big thing that we were talking about, and you sent me the interview, the article of Ashley Moss, I believe is how you say her name, and it's about, is she a journalist or is she an entertainer? And that's like a whole nother thing. Like, what is a journalist these days? Because like, I feel like the definition has changed, but also you can bring in the word reporter, because I feel like maybe that's a little bit different. I don't know if it's always interchangeable. And then entertainer, because things have really changed these days, where even like networks like an ESPN or a Fox or CBS, like, it's not just knowing your stuff, it's not just knowing the information that you're talking about, but it's kind of like, how entertaining are you to watch? Because there's so much coverage now that it's like, if you're not entertaining here, I might flip to another channel. So there's this whole thing that we could like get into separately. Now I'm going off on a tangent. But in terms of Ashley, the article was talking about the way she kind of carries herself and the way that she delivers herself on Instagram and her social media, because it's not what you would typically see of someone who calls himself a journalist, and how we've been talking about, like, a very, think of a journalist, at least like back then, it's like a person who's very put together, probably got like heels on, a pencil skirt, like a button down. And the way she carries herself, it's very different. She comes off as what looks like authentically herself. She wears the outfits that she wants, that's comfortable to her. If it's sneakers, if it's like a cute like crop top, whatever it is. And that brings into question, like, is she like a journalist with the way that she carries herself? And it's talking about how she does like sponsorship stuff, and it maybe crosses over into what, like an influencer type thing. Like, for you, what do you think? And I really like the article because it did bring in people like Sarah Spain and like other like journalists, very respected journalists that have been in this industry for a while, saying it doesn't matter what she does. Like, who am I to like judge how she wears? Like, she's getting the job done. She's doing great interviews. And it's like, who are we to judge? Like, I mean, what do you think about this? Like, do you think like we've evolved to this point where it's like, us as women, like, we can wear whatever the heck we want and like not be judged?
Yeah, I think, it's a personal thing, right? I say, hey, if you feel comfortable talking in front of camera, whatever, go for it. I may not be as confident to do that, but hey, it's something that maybe I want to work on for
Yeah.
myself, right? I do think, I have struggled in the past with being known as a soccer influencer or Austin FC influencer or Austin FC PR, because ethically, like, it just doesn't, that wasn't journalism that I was taught. When you're kind of like, just like, using a press release to say a story, and it just sounds super PR to me. So in the past, I've struggled with that, and then just putting it online, right? I've struggled with that, but I think I'm coming into a space where I think it's okay to, like you said, she's gotten sponsorship, she's gotten these other things. Her Instagram is like, you see her, she's so pretty, beautiful. And it shows like an aspect of her personal life as well, instead of just sports,
Mm.
or what she does as a job. But I do think that there is this line that is being crossed over where you are an influencer, and I guess, a different point of view, you're influencing people to watch you on TV, to keep up with your sports, because maybe you are beautiful, but you're also saying valuable and important information, or getting those important interviews. And if that's how you're influencing and you're using journalism at the same time, then I mean, who am I to say? I mean, if you're getting, your bills paid and you're making a living, go for it. But I do think that it would be, if you were to ask like an old school journalist, like you said, some say, hey, you do whatever. But I feel like there's also maybe just the people that I know, there's still that, like, I don't want to say judgment, but there can definitely be that, are you a fan or are you a journalist? Because
Yeah.
you're not. But, to everyone's opinion, it is what it is. I do think I've been told by news directors that work in Spanish media that it sounds like I'm more of a fan than a journalist. And I took very, very, very high offense, because in the English side, they tell me the opposite. So it really depends on who you're catering as
Yeah.
well. Because like I said, I mean, I think, like, for example, if you go to Mexico, and you work in media, you're supposed to be against or working against the club, right? You're supposed to be finding those headlines. And I think here it's a little bit different in the United States. And so when I say, like, I've been called out for being a quote unquote a fan of a journalist, I just think that there's different types. So just like them, I'm not the person to judge someone's work. But, if we all went to journalism school, then we know what we're doing.
Yeah.
We know what we learned. We all learned the same thing.
Do you think that this is do you think the way that Ashley Moss is kind of like the future of how this industry of sports coverage is moving into?
Yeah, I mean, look, you look at networks, not just her, but you look other networks, other talent. A lot of them are people who have a big following. A lot of them, the reason that they have a big following is because they were either former players or former something to do in their entertainment industry, where essentially they maybe did not study journalism. They weren't doing it just to, get into the business. That's not to discredit them, but I do think that, like you said, if you are good on camera and you are entertaining your audience and you have a big following, I think TV is struggling, at least in this area, to get viewers. And so, at least for your local, I don't know about streaming. I still
Yeah.
think streaming they're trying to figure it out as well. So yeah, why not get all these eyes?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think, you people need to adjust, and that's okay. I mean, you just got to adjust and change maybe a little bit of how you're taking on your coverage, for the future.
Is it still fair to see like people who are very open about this is like my favorite team, but they're still covering that league? Like, do you still see that as journalism? Do you still see that as like good reporting?
If they're, in my opinion, if they're also being critical and try to be unbiased about it, then yes, right. If I know that your team is LAFC and you're covering LAFC, but because I know a lot of talent gets recruited by the club essentially to be that journalist, right? Not everyone, but I have seen it. Um, but if you're able to at least, answer the big question, why isn't this person playing? Or, they spend so much money on X, what's going on that they're not on the pitch? The club needs to get their bang for their buck, you
Yeah.
know? if you're asking those questions to me, I, in my opinion, I'd be like, well, he's doing a good job. Like, okay, maybe he is a fan. But I always say it's hard to do sports journalism and not be a fan. You're a fan of the sport. You're a fan of players. You're a fan. I think that's just human nature. You get excited, and it's a conversation that I had with Grant a lot. And he was your typical old school journalist. Like you do not cover the team that you love. You cover another team. And he was always about that. He was a Kansas City boy. So he said, I would never cover them, but I'm covering other clubs because he wanted it, he was biased, so he was your typical old school journalism, which I was like, ugh. I was like, I wish. I was like, the only thing I have here is Austin FC. So
Oh, I love that. I want to talk about Latinas like us covering MLS. There's not a lot of Latino coverage about MLS, I think, in general. And then you bring in the women aspect, and there's definitely not much. I mean, for someone like us, especially someone like you, you said you're the only female Latina in Austin covering the team, like, what kind of opportunities are presented there? Because I think that there will be lots of people here listening that are maybe like, oh, I don't know if I should be doing this. Like, I'm sure it's like oversaturated, or like, why should I even try? So like, where are the opportunities for Latino coverage in MLS, but specifically coming from the female perspective?
yeah, I mean, like, it's been hard. I think, like I said, there's this vision tunnel still, at least when it comes to TV. There's this tunnel vision where if you are bilingual, I was always told stay in your lane. Either you do Spanish or you do English. I was told this by anchors. I was told this by news directors. Stay in your lane. They don't like the Spanglish. They don't think it's appealing. But when I come home and I speak to my brothers and my mom in Spanish, and then we quickly switch to English, it's like, okay, but why? So I think that there's always going to be that challenge, because people are going to see you, like I said, if you are brown, they're going to be like, okay, well, pick your language. So I think that shouldn't be something, though, to get discouraged. I've always been the type of person where, like I said, I was against leaving my hometown to pursue a career. Yes, it caused me anxiety and stress, but that was something I was willing to gamble, right? In life, you have to take gambles. And so I just think if you are good at what you do and someone sees you, then you just got to make sure that you're doing it at 100%, because there's no reason, or no way that someone's going to see you as a Latina. If you know Spanish and you know you could get access to these players, do it. Why not? No one else is doing it. We go back to the same thing, like what news directors or what networks or what stations are looking for. It's your typical, it could be your typical reporter, or it could be an influencer type. It really depends. Everyone is I think they're all figuring it out. So do I see a future of more brown women involved in MLS? I do, but it's going to be with time. I think that there's still, this sport is still, it's more, diverse than NFL, NBA, in my opinion, just because we have a lot of Latinos in this league. But I think that once, this league, Messi came, more Latinos started coming. I think the league is going to soon realize that, hey, we need to start catering to the Spanish speaking community, because right now their jerseys are so expensive. Right now they're trying to figure out how to get money. But literally the audience is right there, but I feel like they're
Yeah.
not catering to the Latino community, even in Austin, Texas. We're a few hours away from the border.
Which is, it's crazy to me. Let me just say that you said that you're the only Latina, the only female Latina covering, because I feel like Austin has so many Latinos.
Yeah, so many Latinos and so many Mexican Americans like myself, and so many, Argentinians that I didn't even know existed, or Uruguayos, or Colombianos, Venezolanos. All those people live here in Austin, and it's just, I'm in awe that the league or clubs, even though they're, tied to Apple TV, you could still continue doing your digital stuff. There's no reason for you not to continue. I get it, politics, but there's always a loophole and everything. And like my mom would always say, el que quiere puede. So I always say, hey, if it means you launching your own path and creating your own show, do it, because as soon as you start making money, at the end of the day, this is a business. They're going to see the demand and they're going to be like, okay, we were doing it all wrong. Or either we buy this person's show that's super successful and is able to connect, or we want to hire them, and we want to hire them to our team so they could spread the word. So I think there's still a lot to be discovered, but I think that people need to take advantage.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of pathways, and I want to end with this because I think this is a perfect way to end our conversation. Is like, I wouldn't be where I am if I hadn't been able to create my own paths. Like, what we do, like, it's still relatively new and it's still growing, and there's so many opportunities with social media and everything. Like, I can't remember what her name is, but what's her name? Can't remember her name, but she had gone to cover the World Cup when the World Cup was in Russia years ago. And it was with Fox Sports, and they did like a live World Cup coverage, like on the scene, literally only on Twitter. Like, it wasn't on broadcast, it wasn't on anything. So like, there's so many opportunities to do different things, and it doesn't just have to be TV. It can be your own blog, it can be YouTube, whatever it is. But there's so many opportunities. So it's really just taking the creating your own space to be able to exist in this industry.
And I feel like people are so scared to get on TV or record themselves, but it's like, hey, you're gonna mess up, you're gonna stumble. It's okay. You get better with practice. In broadcast, they always say reps, 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 reps. Those are so important. It does not matter if you stumble, you're gonna stumble. Even professionals still stumble. But it's okay. It's about just doing it, getting up. If you mess up, make sure you just like literally ad lib quickly, because that's the key that news directors, broadcasters look for. They need you just to keep going, the conversation going. And like I said, like, if I haven't been in this industry long enough, I wouldn't be having this whole conversation for 40 minutes. So I can definitely keep going.